My name is Joe Strother. I'm the Director of Sales here at FESA. Today we're going to talk about the Thrift Savings Plan and the TSP worksheet, the third part of their retirement income. When you get to this part of the presentation, it's real easy to get excited because you know you're almost done, and we start talking numbers, etc., etc. It is very, very important that you stay in the same mind frame and tempo as you were when you were going through the pay stub. There's still technically nothing to sell because we're just explaining how their TSP is set up. However, we can start talking faster. We might get a little more perky, and those little bitty things people pick up on. And it's like, well, why all of a sudden is he excited? Because we're talking about TSP. You weren't this excited when we were talking healthcare. Why the change? It's critical that their buying guards stay down, and you do that by doing what I was just talking about. We are just fulfilling the service. They are only buying you. The sale is never made at the end. That's very true. It's all about the power start. They are going to buy into you. They're going to see you as the expert. They're going to see you as the doctor prescribing to them what they need to do. They're not going to say, well, I'm really glad about how awesome this annuity product is. I can't wait to buy it. It's not what we're going to do. And then Mike S. always says, don't kid yourself. Be true to yourself. And when you're going through this, do not joke around and say, oh, no, I can save them with this, that, and the other, because you're not. It's all happened in the power start, and if we maintain the consistency and sound like our pay stub, then you're going to be in a good position. So we're looking on your PBA, we're looking at pages 15, 16, and 17. At this point in the presentation, you're going to ask for their annual statement. They should have that already out right there with their pay stub. If they don't have it, it's okay. Just tell them to go get one or find one. If they can't find one, then talk about it. Look at their pay stub. This person has been putting in 6%. How long have you been doing that? You can do the math and figure out and make an estimate of what's in there. Because we actually don't care how much is in there, because our sale is conceptual. Our sale is assumed. The concept is simple. We're going to set them up to get the largest retirement income possible. So if they only have $70,000 in there, at the end, on the next video when I talk about the rollover, they're going to do the rollover to maximize that $70,000. If they have $400,000, again, doesn't matter. What way we're going to set them up will enable them to get the largest retirement income possible. But the first thing we're going to do is talk about the Thrift Savings Plan. So I actually start on page 17, the TSP worksheet. When you look at the top of it, you'll see that it has the mandatory participation. We just went through their FERS annuity and their Social Security. And so you'll want to fill in that number. I think in the examples we were using, it was FERS annuity was like $1,100 and their Social Security was like $1,800. On to the right of that, right on the FERS annuity, you'll just write, remember the spousal benefit will get half of that reduced number. And Social Security, they'll get the bigger of the two. Then we'll go ahead and total it up. Hey, we're doing math again. Remember to always write down your numbers and then talk about them. Never write and talk at the same time. Obviously, that would take a very little bit of time. So when we're introducing the TSP, we introduce it as a big deal. You know, this is the third part of your retirement. It's your TSP. It's important for your overall retirement because it stands as your third leg. You know, you don't want to be wobbling on a two-legged stool. We're going to pre-position it with the largest retirement income possible. We're going back to the pay stub. You're going to always refer, every section, just refer back to your pay stub. This TSP 06, it's really, really good that you were putting in 6% because they actually match up to 5%. And this is something Mike always does. He says, do you understand how the matching works? And whether they say yes, no, I didn't even know I had matching, go to page 15. And on page 15, on the bottom left, it says employer matches. At 1 to 3% of basic pay are matched at 100%. The 4th and 5th% are matched at 0.5%, and they're automatically doing 1%. So that's 5% total at 100%. So at the very, very minimum, you want to encourage them to be putting in 5%. Mike will use this example. He'll say, if you gave me $100 and I gave you $200 back, how often would you do it? Well, as often as you gosh darn could, because you are getting fully matched at that 5%. This example is putting in 6%, and that's good. Sometimes you'll see them max it out. Sometimes you'll see a dollar sign, so they're putting in a specific amount, and it's just up to you to figure out the percentage of that. But obviously, they're all going to be putting in the mandatory 1%. So once you explain the matching, then you are going to do the math. You're putting in 6%, do that math. The employer matches at 5%, do that math, and total it up. Right here, you have the G fund, the C fund, the S fund, the I fund, the L fund, the F fund. You have all these different funds that they have the option of putting their TSP monies into. And that is on page 15. Just like I said before, you need to know every page of this just for your own knowledge. And right here on page 15, in the middle right, it talks about all the different funds. Most commonly, you'll see them in the G fund, the S fund, or the L funds. Is pretty common. The G fund is the most, it's a government bond fund, and so they can't lose any money. It usually does somewheres around 2 to 1.5% a year. The S fund, that's the S&P 500, and so these last couple of years it's been really, really good. But let's say you were trying to retire in 2009 and you had a majority of your money in your S&P 500. What happened? Well, you lost your freaking butt because of the 2008 crash. And so we'll reference that so they can get a reminder of, yeah, this doesn't make any sense. We are not financial planners. We are benefit specialists. We help them maximize their benefits. And so you do not want to sit here and boldly tell them, hey, get your money out of the S fund. What you need to do is maneuver yourself with your words to make them arrive to that conclusion. You do not want to financially advise for them. But if you think about it, if you're, let's say you're 3 years from retiring, you have $100,000 in your TSP, and $70,000 of it is in the S fund. Well, let's say the market corrects itself. Well, they're going to lose a whole bunch of money in that S fund that's going to hurt their retirement income. Now let's look at it on the flip side. Let's say they have a whole bunch of money in the S fund, and from the 3 years, for the next 3 years to their retirement date, the S fund does pretty good. Well, no matter how good it does or averages, it is not going to drastically impact over 3 years their retirement income. The risk is not worth the return. When you're looking at what funds they're in, that's where we're going to introduce the 3 phases or stages of retirement. You have the protection phase, the payment phase, and then the distribution phase. These phases, the one that you're going to be, the people you're going to be talking to that they're going to be in the protection phase. The protection phase for me is really like 10 years from retirement. Because if you take a big old hit, it's going to take a while to make that up. So the closer you get to retirement, the more you need to be in the G fund, and we want to guide them to that. So go ahead and fill that out. It's right there on their annual statement. You'll see it clear as day on where you need to have what percentages. You'll just fill it out accordingly. Then we're going to talk future stuff. So we've done the employer contribution, we've done the employer matching, and you're going to get an annual total of what is going into their TSP each year. And then you're going to multiply that by the remaining years. So we've been using an example of 3 years. So you'll multiply that by 3. So over the next 3 years, they're going to be having X amount getting put into their TSP. Add that to their current TSP amount. So let's say they had $100,000 in there. Add how much they're going to be putting into it. And then we're going to do an earnings example. That money is going to do something. Hopefully it grows. I like to be modest. I like to put like a 2 or 3% earnings example because hopefully they're all in the G fund. Michael used that funny joke every time. If I could predict the future, then I wouldn't be here. I'd be down on Wall Street. We don't know what that earnings example is going to be at all, but I like to be modest and conservative. And then you just total it up of what could be in their TSP at retirement. And then we walk them through what they can do with their TSP. This is a part where you need to be really bold because we're going to sufficiently disturb them with the 4 options that they have at retirement with their TSP money. The first option they have is to take it all out. That's a bad option because that is not conquering the goal of least possible taxes. That's maximum taxes. The second option they have is to leave it in the TSP. Leaving it in the TSP is also a bad option, and this is an option you really want to focus on because they're going to have the mindset of, yeah, this is what I want to do. The TSP just a few years ago made it so that you could leave your money in there. Used to, at retirement, it had to go somewhere because it is not a wealth distribution tool. Never was designed to be so. They didn't change anything other than the government said, hey, now you can leave it in there. It's a good wealth accumulating tool. I'm a fan of that, but it is never designed to be a wealth distribution tool. You're at the mercy of the federal government if you leave it in there. If they up and change the rules, they can do that. The federal government also has borrowed from the TSP. It is a massive amount of money from all the federal employees. Now, they've always paid it back, but with no interest. And I don't know who's a fan of giving the federal government a loan without getting any interest back from it. You can move your money around and take payments however you'd want, but in order to ensure you don't run out of retirement money, you can't leave it in the G fund. You actually have to put your money at risk so that you don't run out of money. And that doesn't make any sense because in the distribution phase especially, you don't want any risk on your retirement income. The third option they have, and this is the terrible option, on their TSP annual statement, you'll see in a little blue oval a big number, and it is a big number. And there's an asterisk by it, and it says it's a single life payment, similar to the first annuity payment. And basically, we call it the swap, but it's basically annuitizing your TSP. And what they're saying is, we're going to give you this big number for as long as you live every month. And when you die, whatever's remaining on your TSP, we're going to keep it. There are no beneficiaries set up. Now, within that option, you could decide, no, I want the money, I need the remaining balance to go to my kids. Well, you can do that, but your check will be greatly reduced. It's a terrible option. The fourth option they have is to do a rollover. That's the best option. That is why we are there. On these 4 options, it is important to sufficiently disturb them. See where their mind was. You should be getting a pretty dang good response from them, especially when you talk about why leaving it in your TSP is a bad option. Just like all the other sections, this is pure service, pure education, looking at, hey, we're talking about the third part of your retirement income, and we're looking at your statement, and I'm just walking you through it. I'm explaining to them their current situation. There's a lot of information on page 15 and 16 that you are going to want to be familiar with so that you can go through this section with confidence. All right, I'm going to go through the TSP worksheet, and I'm going to use blank numbers. I'm going to literally just say X, and you can fill in any numbers you want to practice with them. But I want you to hear the flow and how you should actually move through the TSP worksheet. So I've just wrapped up the Social Security. All right, now do you have any questions on this action now, action laters with the Social Security? I know we didn't go into it very much, but we are going to put together that Social Security report. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is your TSP. This is a very important part because it completes the third part of your retirement income. If you look on your pay stub, this TSP 06, this is what we're going to be talking about. And we're going to talk a little bit here on why that 06 on your pay stub is actually a really good thing. Do you have your TSP annual statement with you? You do. Excellent. Great. Let me take a quick look at this. All right. I'm going to put together this worksheet, and it's going to put together all three parts of your retirement income. So just give me a quick second. I'm going to write these numbers down. All right. The first two parts of your retirement we've already talked about. That was your FERS annuity and your Social Security. On your FERS annuity, we figured you at about $1,100. That was the single life number. Now remember, you can take 10% less of that and have your spouse receive half, if that's a route that we're going to go. So on the spousal benefit, I'm going to put half. Your Social Security, you said it's probably around $1,800, but you haven't been to that website yet. So I'm going to write $1,800, and we can change these numbers, and we will change these numbers to make them more accurate. And for your spouse, you actually get the larger of the two. You don't get to combine them. And so if your Social Security check is bigger than your wife's, when you pass, she can get that check. But she doesn't get to keep both. It's just the bigger of the two. And so to total that up, it's about $1,900 from your mandatory participation. This is completely under government control. You've had no say of how much you paid into them, and you had no say on the calculations they use to figure out how much they're going to pay you. Now, the third part of your retirement is that TSP. That TSP 06, you have your annual statement here, and this is actual and optional participation. Right now, you're putting in 6% of your base rate into the TSP, and that's really good because do you know how the matching works? Kind of. All right, well, I'm going to explain it to you. I'm going to circle it for you right here. Employers matches. You are getting 100% matched 1 and 3%. And then you're getting 50% matched on the 4th and 5th%, but the government is automatically matching you at 1%, which comes to a full total of 5% at 100% matching. And you're actually doing 1% more than that. So congratulations of taking real advantage of your matching system. Some people don't. It's shocking, but you've been doing a great job of it. So I'm gonna do some quick math and look at how much you're throwing in to it. Okay, so you're throwing in X amount right here, and the employer, since you're putting in 1% more, is going to match it at 5%. So that's good, and that's X right here, and that you're putting in each year X amount. You have any questions on that? No. Okay. So right now you have a little over $100,000 in your TSP, and when I look at your TSP statement, I see that you have about 40% of it in the G fund, and the rest of it is in the S fund. Are you familiar with those two funds? You are, and you're smiling. Yes, the S&P and 500 these last few years has done really, really well. It's kind of had a bounce back, if you will. Now, most financial people will agree that there's 3 phases to building a retirement nest egg or an income. The first phase is the accumulation phase. This is where you really want to capitalize on all the high risk funds, like the S fund, the F fund, and the I fund, because you can afford to take a little bit of a hit like we had in 2008, if you can remember that. That was really painful. But you can recover from it because you're younger and you're not near retirement. And so try to get as much as you can. You're accumulating. As you get nearer and nearer to retirement, like you're 3 years from retirement, you fall under the protection phase. This is where you've spent and you've done your diligence of building up this retirement egg, and you now need to protect this egg. You don't want any cracks. You don't want this egg to get smaller. It's grown. It's fantastic. And in the protection phase, you want to move money that's at risk into a place where there's no risk. Within your TSP, the G fund is your no risk fund. That's the fund that it's government bonds. It doesn't earn much at all. I think right now it's around 1.8%. It's never going to do much, but it's also not going to hurt you. In the protection phase, you want to move money from risky areas and put them into a place where they're protected. The third phase of retirement, that's a distribution. That's where you're actually going to draw your money from. And you'll be in that phase in 3 years. You have any questions on those phases? No? Okay. So what I had on this math is each year between your contribution and the matching, you're putting in X amount. You're going to work for 3 more years, which brings your new contribution to your current TSP to be X amount. And I don't know the future. I wish I did sometimes, but if I knew what this market was going to do, I would probably be on Wall Street and not out here speaking with you. But I don't know the future, and I don't know what the market's going to do. And so I just put a 2% earnings example, and so you can expect maybe. I think this is going to be kind of close in these next 3 years to have X amount in your TSP. Now at retirement, you actually have a few options of what you need to do with your TSP. 3 of them are really terrible options, to be honest, but there is a good option. The first bad option that you have is to take it all out. Now, you're going to have, $130,000-ish in your TSP at retirement. And if you took all of that out, Uncle Sam's going to show up and say, "Hey, bud, that money's been growing, and I haven't seen any taxes on it yet." And they're going to take 35% of it right off the top. Well, that completely eliminates the goal of the least possible taxes. That's the most taxes you could pay on it. That's not a good idea. Also, studies have shown that when people are in retirement and they take a big lump sum, they're more inclined to actually run out of retirement income. And that's the last thing you want to do is, "Hey, I'm retired," and then realize you got to go back to work. Hey, if you want to go back to work, that's great. But if you have to go back to work because you've ran out of retirement money, well, that's a different story altogether. So that's a really bad option. The second bad option is to just leave it in there. Leaving your money in the TSP is a bad option for several reasons. The government, just a couple years ago, made it so that you could leave it in there. Used to, at retirement, you had to move that money somewhere. The TSP is designed to accumulate wealth, and you have done a great job of that. It was never designed to be a wealth distribution tool. You're going to be at the full mercy of any federal government change. If they up and change the rule like they did that when they said you could leave it in there, then you're at the mercy of that. The federal government has borrowed from the TSP. They've always paid it back, but they have borrowed from it, and they paid it back without any interest. So you're basically giving the government a nice little loan without interest. Leaving it in your TSP is not what you want to do. In order to ensure you don't run out of income, you actually have to put money at risk. If you're drawing from this and you have all of your money in the G fund, then what's going to be happening? Your money is going to be going down. So you actually have to put your money at risk using, a C or an S fund to ensure you don't run out of money. And hope to goodness the market doesn't correct yourself as you live in retirement for 30 years. Leaving it in there is a bad option. The third bad option, and this is really the worst option, if you look on your annual statement here, this number right here in this blue circle, the government is going to say, give me your TSP balance, and I'm going to give you that number every month for as long as you live. And when you die, whatever the remaining balance is, I'm going to keep it. You're basically swapping your TSP balance for a monthly check. Yeah, I know, it's shocking. They still offer it, so someone must be doing it. Now, you can set it up where you'll get a monthly check from the TSP, and you'll have beneficiaries like your kids or a charity or your spouse here with your remaining balance, but that check number is greatly reduced. Swapping your hard-earned TSP funds for a check and letting your beneficiary be the federal government is a bad option. Now, your fourth option, this is your good option. This is a rollover. Are you familiar with what a rollover is? That's how you move through the TSP worksheet. It needs to be organized. It needs to be educated. It needs to be confident. There was no selling in there. There was nothing to sell. It was just me walking them through the TSP worksheet. It's organized, and I'm a big fan of it. The next section is the last section, and that is where we talk about the rollover. And we talk about that in another video. Continue to work hard and have fun.